Hi, I'm Barrie Rose, and in this podcast, I talk to content creators and advocates in the progressive space, ultimately making the world a better place. Today, I talked to the Zactivist about going from teacher to content creator, how he navigated bullying as a kid as a double minority, and how to stay positive with all the stuff that's going on in the world. Plus, I learned a lot. I know you will too. Enjoy. Hi, Zack.
Hey Barry, how are you?
I'm great. It's great to see you.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I can't wait to talk and for us to catch up, but also to engage with your audience and the people that follow and love you.
Yeah. Well, I see you as this bright light that creates informative content that really explains very complex issues with your own words because you're a really good speaker. How would you describe yourself and the content that you make?
Well, being a bright light, was the original point and kind of what really got me on social media, especially TikTok. I've always been on social media, and it was always kind of like many people. It starts off as like a personal journaling type experience, documenting your life, documenting the things that are important in your life. But in 2020, when TikTok really started to take off, I was one of the first people to jump on there and really want to be a piece of positivity and honest information in the world. And that's kind of what kept kind of what sparked the platform. And being true to the whole concept of like being a positive voice has been important, but it's really hard when there's so much negativity impacting the world. It is, especially for me as a double minority, it's been really hard. But I try to let that be an anchor. So I do appreciate that comes across to you, and hopefully it comes across to other people in the content. I'm constantly thinking about ways to at least offer some positivity in this moment, because there's a lot of things happening that just aren't positive, and there are a lot of people's lives who are taking turns that aren't positive. So I think it's really important for those of us who can be bright lights, who can be positive, to do our part in trying to brighten the corners of the world where we are and where we show up and where we can be found.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, do you feel like you're naturally like that, or do you have to do things to kind of stay positive amidst all the stuff?
On next Thursday night, my YouTube is way too small. It's just disrespectfully difficult to grow on YouTube. I know I'm making good content. I have some really great things that people would love to see if I could get it in front of them. So I'm doing like this party at my house. I'm inviting creators over. Some of them probably love, AB, I'm Lincoln Hype. Tons of people, Alicia Lunch and Lawyer.
Oh, I love a lot of those. All the names you
I'm
dropped.
inviting so many people from different platforms, and I'm gonna do like a seafood boil and everybody's favorite drinks. I'm gonna have like gifts and surprises for people. But while everybody's in the main part, like I have a nice living room, dining room set up. Everybody will be in there enjoying it. I'll be in my bedroom, which none of these people have actually been in, because like I'm weird about my bedroom. Like it's a private space, but I'm gonna actually go into my actual bedroom where I actually have a desk in there and like a couch and some stuff, and we're gonna record in there. So for sound purposes, and in this, it's gonna be like a 12-hour recording, like from 8 o'clock p.m. until like 8 o'clock a.m. And people are going to be coming in from the party to be a part of the podcast, a live stream on YouTube, and go out and back and forth. And I was working on questions last night, and I was really reflecting. And as I'm writing my questions for my guests, I'm thinking to myself, that's one of the questions. And who are you really? You really know who you are when you're able to like show up and describe how you really are. And in social media, people see us on our platforms, and they have an idea of who they think they are, but who are we really? And when I really peel back, it would definitely be very bright. I think sometimes my content is so heavy, I don't come across as light as I am in terms of just carefree-ish. Even though I have a lot of worries, at the end of the day, they're not really worries, because I know how it's going to end. No matter what happens now, I know what the end result will be, and the end result will be good. Everything that happens is for the good of us and for the good of humanity, and it's always going to end in the positive, in the affirmative. It's always going to win. It's always going to work out. Love really does win.
Yeah.
It always triumphs over hate. There's no question about it. Light always beats the dark. Those are the universal laws that govern our universe, our world. And even though we're in dark moments and even though we're facing dark things, it's all going to work out. And so I think that reality keeps me grounded. I would say, yeah, it keeps me light.
Oh, yes, that was so beautiful and inspirational. Okay, even though your content might touch on things that are dark and heavy, your essence in the real world, as far as what I've seen, like you practice what you preach, or you're not someone who's like different online than in real life. For instance, when I think I originally might have saw you at the DNC, but I don't know if we talked then, or it might have been a trending up, the original trending up. I think I saw you first, but then I really saw you at in Milwaukee when we were at this content activation, and we were at Oktoberfest, and you let me borrow your mic to record just at Oktoberfest. And I feel like it was a really generous thing, like to just let this kind of stranger take your mic for the day and have that trust. So I noted that, like I tucked that in my back pocket. I was like, okay, this is someone who cares about other people. And I felt like you were a friend to everyone. It's also cool that you're having this kind of gathering. I wish I could be there. It's in Atlanta, right?
It's in Atlanta. It'll be a fun time, and I don't actually, don't usually do a lot of stuff in my home. I'm relatively newly single again, and my ex partner wasn't as extroverted as I am. So, and we got this house. I've been here for 6 years, and we bought it together, and so this was our first home together. Like I had a home that we used to live in, that was my home. So of course, when it's my home, it was a little bit more. It was just easier to say, hey, can I have friends over? But in this house, we never had guests over really. And so that's just kind of, even though he's no longer here, that's been like, I kind of carried that over with me, the whole like, just not doing stuff at the house. So I'm excited to open the house up to people and let people kind of come in and all at one time. Of course, friends have come over individually. All these people have come over individually. But I'm excited to have everybody over all at one time for an actual event. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think they're going to really enjoy it. But
Yeah.
and what you said about friends, everyone's a friend to me. Like I really do have that approach, and I know so many things come, of course, from childhood. Because for me, when I was young, friends were not as easy to come by. So because of how I show up in the world, because of who I am, and growing up in a very small town in Mississippi, for multiple reasons, not just the fact that I'm queer, but also the fact that, I grew up very disadvantaged. A lot of things that some kids said I didn't have. And so for me, I always think I made it an effort that everyone who needs a friend, I'll be a friend to. And everyone I meet is a friend until they're not.
Ah, so it's like a friend until proven otherwise, like until it, like if
Right.
something happened.
Yes, I have a very open heart. And I think that's a choice that I really think that's an unconscious choice that we all make many times at a very young age. I think a lot of people choose to close their hearts when they experience bullying or experience hurt or experience rejection. But I know that I made a conscientious effort to keep my heart open and not close it because of how I was treated by other people.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, that is a very active decision. Are you saying that you were bullied or something?
Of course, yes. And I think that's like, yeah, absolutely.
I never have necessarily heard you talk about it. Can I ask about your queerness?
No, you can ask all the questions. Yes, I'm an open heart and an open book for you.
Wow. So is that why you were you bullied like for being queer in Mississippi?
Yes, absolutely, for everything, but definitely for projecting as more feminine in the world than masculine as a child. Definitely,
Oh,
it was, yeah. I'm relentlessly bullied
like what age are we talking?
from birth.
Uh,
No, it was definitely like very young, like like early elementary on up. It was continuous.
oh, yeah. I feel that. I was really bullied, like from my brother and like from other people. Like I had a speech impediment. I don't know. I feel like sometimes certain people just attract bullying. I don't know why. It's like because you're not like like an aggressive person that people are scared of. You're more of a target. And I feel like people can naturally sense when you're different in a way or like different than the majority. How did you become, because I feel like you're really yourself. How did you become unapologetically you and confident in that?
It was, I so this is so crazy. All of these, I vividly remember making these decisions as a child, like literally 7, 8 years old, like very young. I vividly remembering that I'm not going to let people not let make me a friend. And I remember vividly saying, like, you're not going to take away my light. Like, that's like the song in like you sing in elementary choir, and like the little music class, this is a lot of mine. I was not going to let anyone take away my light. Like, you're not going to take away who I am. You're not going to I'm not changing. I'm not changing for you. I just remember thinking that in like first grade, like, well, I'm not changing. Everyone in here, all the boys want to be firefighters, police officers, professional sports players. I wanted to be a scientist. Like, I'm not going to do what you people are doing because that isn't who I am. Like, I remember very specifically in deciding I'm not changing anything. Now, why did I decide that? I do not know. I can't tell you what about me then made me that way, but I remember being very determined to not change. Like, if I was going to switch down the road, I was going to switch down the road. I'm not changing how I walk. I'm not changing how I talk. I'm not changing any of that.
Oh, yeah, that's powerful to just say, this is who I am. I feel like I didn't really learn who I was until like the last, or who I was always evolving, but I've only become really grounded in who I am in the last few years. So that's really incredible that you could feel that kind of conviction as a first grader.
As a first grader, I think I kind of feel like it's a little like crazy too. Like, I have no idea where it came from. No clue. I do also recall like being bullied didn't necessarily bother me a great deal either. And I thought that was I think that's kind of a little bit weird too. Like, okay, kids are kids and they're dumb. Like, it's kind of how my mind was. Like, okay, well, it doesn't matter. It never bothered me until I realized it was bothering my family. And that is when it had like a huge crushing impact. That's when it mattered. It didn't matter until I realized it bothered everybody else.
So what did you do?
You know what? I tried to shield them from it. I tried to create environments to where they weren't there if I was going to be bullied, or when I would be able to protect them from me being bullied, so their feelings wouldn't be hurt. Because mine actually really weren't that hurt. Like, it just didn't bother me. To some extent, it's kids being kids, and it's also to another extent the product of what they're dealing with in their trauma and their hurt and their abuse. So, but I realized that, but I also knew that my family didn't realize that. And I think that's a part of the story. Maybe one day I'll write a book about it. But one thing about me is like, I think I'm the firstborn child. I'm like the big brother. Hence, you getting the microphone. I'm a big brother to everybody. It's my default archetype. Like, I automatically go into big brother mode for everybody, no matter who you are, how old you are. It's just that's my archetype. So a part of being a big brother is just being everybody's protector. So I was very protective of everybody in my family. And I also, recognize that we were different, that I'm not like them and they're not like me. And some of the, ways in which I'm a very strong person, a lot of people in my family weren't strong in that same way. So I was always worried about their feelings about that.
Wow. Yeah, so part of what you're saying, being the firstborn makes a lot of sense because it kind of makes you a leader. I would think. I'm actually the baby of the family, so I'm just. But from what I've seen, it makes you kind of take more responsibility in your life. But I did want to say, I feel that quality of you wanting to help people. Okay, you had this call with Lorenzo, and I overheard it, and I want to tell you that you were part of the inspiration for starting this podcast.
Oh, good.
You were having this conversation with them, and it sounded like you were talking about what you're passionate about and how to help someone else monetize that. And you were talking about all these different ideas. And you said, and I had at the time was thinking about creating a podcast because I had one years ago. And you said something like, oh, there could be a podcast where like content creators talk to each other. And I was like, oh, that actually makes sense with what I'm thinking about. So maybe this is the sign to do that. And so
Yes.
you're just part of the inspiration I wanted to tell you.
Thank you.
So, what got you into creating content? Because you said you wanted to be a scientist, and that's kind of a big jump.
In first grade, I really like.
Yeah.
If I loved learning about stuff. That was first grade. I think I realized I was going to be a teacher maybe in like second grade, and so that's kind of and that stuck. So I was someone I wanted to be a teacher, and I was a teacher for 17. Well, I was in public education for 17 years, and I taught high school English. I taught primarily American Lit and an advanced placement language and composition and journalism. And so, I went to college, I majored in English. I also worked at a newspaper in college. So all the journalism stuff was always there. That formal training was always there. It just wasn't being really used in the way that I use it now. So after 10 years as a teacher, I then went to 7 years in central office administration where I was over language arts programs for two large school districts in metro Atlanta. One was like in the suburb, and then one was the actual city school system. And the last position I had in education was as the director of curriculum instruction, where I oversaw all instructional programs for a city school system in metro Atlanta. And so I was really happy doing that, and it was wonderful. But as an educator, although I've always been very political and always been very abreast of news, always had a passion and thirst for news and how news affects marginalized communities, I didn't do a lot with it publicly because I felt as though it really wasn't appropriate. So I'm one of those teachers who honestly would not ever, I never shared my personal beliefs with my students. Of course, they could kind of glean it and kind of, assume it, but I didn't share it. So kids would ask me things and I would turn it always back on them and say, well, what do you think? Or why do you think that? Because that to me is what a good teacher does, because I don't want there to be a personal barrier between me and the student. Like I might dislike a kid's beliefs, but it's a kid. They're learning how to even learn, even in high school. So, I wanted to always maintain that level of objectivity with my students. And that's my philosophy of education. I know that every educator doesn't feel that way, but that's how I felt. And I was recruited into corporate America from my job in education. And so once I went to corporate America, the work changed and the level of purpose that I get from work also changed. And it opened up the door for me to seek greater purpose in other areas of my life. And that's where the content creation came in. I always knew how to do content. I always felt very confident with content, but I wasn't creating it on a regular basis because why would I when I wasn't going to share it with anyone because of my job? And also the time flexibility was different. I actually work a lot more now in my current job, but the work is flexible. And when I have to do the work is more flexible than what it was as a teacher, literally working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day of a 180 school day, 180 day school year. So that's kind of what like reemerged and kind of reopened that door. And when we had the 2020 election, I'm like, there's a lot of voices out there, but a lot of those voices, even if they're meaning well, they may not be doing well, if that makes sense. A lot of people may not understand. I see connections between a lot of the big issues the big gulfs that exist. A lot of it did start on social media and they festered on social media without like good positive resolution.
Okay.
So here's an example, right? You had a lot happen in the summer 2020. A lot of progress was made around Black Lives Matter and the movement for Black lives. But in that process, there were a lot of allies or well-meaning people who didn't know what they were necessarily doing or how to proceed, who then did things, made mistakes, and then they were chastised for those mistakes. And the impact on their personhood was complete 180, where they then were no longer allies or accomplices or even seeking to be, and they became antagonists. That was, in my opinion, for many things, a missed opportunity. And then you had the inverse of the Black Lives Matter movement, the fight against cancel culture. And you had all types of voices from all spectrums arguing against cancel culture, when cultural capital is the only pillar of society that that marginalized people uphold. And now we've lost that pillar, and we've lost that mechanism to fight back and fight for ourselves, because now you can't cancel, or the impact of the cancel isn't the same. When that was our only recourse, if that makes sense. And it didn't have to be that way, but here we are. And so that was what sparked me to enter the foray and really try to give an honest approach and an objective approach, an honest approach at all times, from a different perspective than what other people may have been giving. That's why, I don't curse often in my content, and I don't bait and attack other creators who I know are well-meaning in what they may have done. The only time that I would ever directly go at a creator is when you're doing something to attack someone else in malice, being a big brother, fighting for other people, defending people.
It actually doesn't sound like a big jump to go into content creation if you're a teacher, because you are teaching essentially, just in a different form.
I agree. Correct. 100%. That's exactly how I see my content, as educational, informative. 100% the same thing.
Yeah, and I like how you are able to see things and fill in the gaps where there has to be more shared to kind of contextualize things and share information that would really help someone see the broader picture of something. For instance, I watched this piece of your content today that was talking about the suffrage movement and voting rights for women, but then how Black women were left out of that equation, and that they kind of paved the way, but then it didn't they weren't able to access it. And that was super interesting. It was really interesting because I didn't know that. And what better way to learn than through your video?
Thank you. Yeah, and that goes back to there's a lot of people who were really upset that Black women specifically were saying they were not marching publicly or making a big deal about the indivisible, day of action on April the 5th. But when you look historically at what has happened, Black people are oftentimes some of the loudest voices in movements, put at the forefront of movements, but then history never tells their story. They're completely omitted or forgotten, or not able to reap the benefits of what they did. And the suffrage movement is a prime example, one of many movements.
Yeah. Do you think that's will change and has changed at this point in time?
It would have. I definitely felt as though in 2020 it would have changed, that it was going to change. I anticipated the reactions that came from the other side. I knew that was going to happen, but I didn't anticipate how quickly people on the right side of history would give up and fold, or take their eyes off the prize and be so easily distracted. It was the level of distraction that I didn't anticipate, and that took me by surprise. It's proven to be really easy to distract people from the work of forward moving progress. And the right they're masterful at that, at the distraction, at the divisive distraction.
Right.
There's a whole argument going online about two young men, and a young Black man killed a young white man, and that young white man died in the arms of his brother. I purposely not cover the story because I think that it's a divisive story. The father, these were I think they were friends, had a relationship. The father of the young white man literally said, "This is not about race." Yet mainstream society and the media are making it about race, and everyone's jumping onto it and letting it catch fire like it is a race issue. They're only doing that now because this is a distraction, at a time when America's economic engine is crashing and burning, because they don't want people to realize what's happening with the economy and be laser focused on that disaster when you have this whole entire false race issue being created.
Yeah.
That's the distraction. And I'm always amazed at how easy it is for people to like stop the work and do that. Do the distraction.
Yeah, distraction techniques at large. I don't know too much about them, but did notice like all the attacks on trans people in a time where like trans people are like 1% of the population, and there was like so much energy put on this really small minority, whereas like what about the cost of groceries? Like what about the stuff that's affecting everyone, not just this small amount of the population? Let's focus on what matters here. And let's focus on humanity, like our genuine humanity, and like helping each other and making things that bring progress and not just divide people.
Exactly. That you brought up, that's a great point. That was very baffling to me throughout the whole entire 2024 election. It was baffling to me that the most effective campaign for the Trump administration was the one where they emphasized that Vice President Harris supported surgeries for prison inmates who were dealing with body dysmorphia and who were, given life-saving health care to sustain their lives. And that was the biggest, most effective campaign for the Trump, campaign, saying that Kamala, I'm for you and Kamala's for they, them. That
Oh yeah, I remember that.
and how that made such a difference and for the Trump voters and how they love that we're living at a time in America where it literally is important to discriminate against a group of people. Like literally people are fighting for the right to discriminate against men and women who happen to be trans. I never thought that we would be here, but we are.
Yeah, it is also ridiculous that like they honed in on that part of her campaign, because that wasn't like what she was necessarily running on. Like her thing was always like, I have an economic plan that'll serve all people. And the trans help that she was giving or supporting wasn't like her main focus. I guess that's besides the point.
But that's how authoritarianism works. They always have to have an enemy or a villain that they vilify that comes from a marginalized small group of people that don't have the political and cultural capital to fight back. So Nazi Germany did it with Jewish people, and that was the focus and the target. And we have it with Republicans or MAGA, whatever you want to call them. That's what they're doing with men and women who happen to be trans in this moment. That's one group, but and that's how and it always starts there, but it always spreads out. So we you start with trans people, then you go into it spread out to where you're then going to go after not they're mowing the grass. Then, I hope it's not coming across too loud. Then now we're going after migrants, and it's going to just continue to grow. And they do it in such a carefully crafted way that other groups that are adjacent who will be impacted won't even know it. When Donald Trump got on the stage and talked about Haitians eating dogs and cats, he was talking about every single migrant in America. He was saying he's going to come for every single migrant in this country, no matter who you are or why you're here. But Venezuelans didn't hear that. They heard he's talking about Haitians. But Donald Trump saw all of you as Haitians. He didn't care if you weren't from Haiti. When he said Haitians, he's meant bigger. And here's what I need gay people to realize, members of the LGBTQA plus community, all letters that are in that beautiful umbrella need to realize that when he talks about trans people, he's talking about all of you. Because to Donald Trump, I'm trans. He just sees no difference between me and a trans person. He sees no difference between a bisexual person and a gay person and a lesbian. It's all one thing to him. It's all trans.
Right, it's all like other.
Right. So every attack against a trans man or woman is an attack against the entire community. And it's so disappointing to see some members of the community not recognize that and literally fight to not recognize that.
Yeah, I think we do all need to use our voice and use our spaces online to help these marginalized communities, whether it be like immigrants or trans people or whoever it is, that everyone is included and everyone matters. What do you feel we need to do as content creators to like work together, or just people in general to work together towards a better future?
I think it's all about the education and sharing of our platforms and networks with each other, like this, like doing this. Like you having a podcast, you're inviting me on, you're giving me a chance to talk to people in your community, in your network, in your world that I otherwise wouldn't reach. And so I appreciate that. And I think that's kind of one thing that we have to do. I also think that we have to be very considerate of the platforms that we're building and why we're building them, whatever the reason may be. I think we all need to have a North Star. Like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and be aware of that and make sure that you're being honest and true to that. I think that's also very important. One thing that I've done is I have a list of rules that I adhere to, and sometimes I take things off, at times I add to it. But I think that's really important that every content creator early in their career in creating content, whether you're doing it as a full-time career or you're doing it as a part-time passion or hobby, have some rules that you're not going to break. And so one rule for me is I'm not going to ever talk about what a person or a group of people did from one community and blame the entire community for it. There are content creators who are going to hop on this, like, white people did this or black people did this, or I don't know why why would you ever do that? Like, why would you ever do that? 3 white people got on the internet and said that they do not use a washcloth. Now, all of a sudden, white people don't use washcloths. But that's what it becomes, right? So then every white person who uses a washcloth hears that and they're offended. And you're causing walls to be built and erected in people's minds that will then block whatever good information or good thing that you're trying to bring to the table from ever getting through. And you're perpetuating and spreading stereotypes to your actual followers. So I think, that's an example of a rule, is to never let the actions of 1, 2, 3, or even more people in a group make you talk about a group.
Yeah, I very much agree with that sentiment, because just because there's a couple like wealthy white men in power that are making really bad decisions for the country doesn't mean like every single white man is a bad man. I mean, I think you can't stereotype a whole demographic, though some people give it a bad name. I feel like good and evil exist in any demographic. I'm glad to hear that you have rules that you stand by, or core values. Like I remember you said you don't swear.
I try not to.
Do you swear in like daily life, and you just don't?
A lot, yeah.
Okay.
A whole lot.
Huh.
A lot.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't swear in content either. Is that how come?
I think that for me, it's not appropriate for my brand.
Yeah.
I think it diminishes what my brand brings, so it doesn't fit. Because people love it. My friends, like, please, if you could just talk like you talk in real life with the cursing. I'm not doing it, because it just doesn't fit the goals of what I'm trying to do, to educate. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah, maybe in that context it just doesn't make sense.
Right. So I've done a little bit more like humorous weekly wrap-ups, and so I do like use cursing there, but not, you don't hear it. I bleep it out.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I bleep it out on purpose though, because I'm still not gonna curse. I'm still not gonna do it. But you get enough to where I think the humorous effect is still there, but no, I'm still not gonna do it.
Wait, that's great. I'd love to see your list of rules someday.
Yeah, I'll happily share it with you.
your master document of rules.
It's like in the journal, so I'll have to go through them and I'll take some pictures and see those pages because I think of them and then I'll put them in there. Then I'll circle them a certain way so I can reflect back on them. But usually when I write something down like that, it sticks.
Yeah, that's great advice for anyone who wants to get into content. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up? I'll just say your handle is the Zactivist on
Yes.
most things, I believe. Oh, you also have a media company.
Oh yeah, I do. It's like it's 3+1 Media. The ultimate goal one day is to have is to fund tons of content creators and to have content from various people, all sourced on 3+1 Media. So that's the ultimate long-term goal. Right now, the focus of that is lives on YouTube. And I do a weekly live show every Wednesday at 10 p.m.
Oh, tonight.
Yep, tonight. But on every Monday, we have a show called Kings at the Table, and it's anywhere from 4 to 6 black men, many of them queer, talking about issues, politics, people, and pop culture. But it's a little bit more heavy on the pop culture and the people as opposed to the politics, like what I do on Wednesday night. And then I try to do at least twice a week something called the People's Brief, where I'm giving my own personal commentary on the big events that are happening throughout the course of a given week. So that's currently right now the focus of the 3+1. But the whole point is that we're really emphasizing with 3+1 Media giving voice to black, brown, and queer people in those communities and talking about how these issues impact those communities.
Well, thanks for all your wisdom and education on all these topics. Like you said earlier, love and good will always win in the end.
Right. It may take a long time, but ultimately it will win.
It's been really nice to talk to you a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Barry, anytime you guys need me, I'm here.
Likewise, I'm always here as well. Whatever you need. But yeah, is there anything you'd like to say to close out?
Oh, yeah, nothing but follow me on platforms, specifically YouTube. I'm trying to grow that YouTube. And it's the Zactivist on all platforms. It's YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. But definitely follow. If you only have to follow one and pick one, pick the YouTube. Thank you so much, Barry. I appreciate it.